Thank you. All right. Hello, everyone. Can you, yeah? As mentioned, I'm going to talk about how can you make generative AI real in enterprise setting. It's pretty easy to build prototype, but how can you turn this prototype into applications that are ready for a large number of customers? That's a big challenge. So I wanted to start by kind of reminding everybody about the difference between MLOps and large language model ops or LLM ops. The basic in terms of scope and definition, I'm not going to go into it, but what is interesting is the development is different for LLM ops. You want to be focusing on prompt engineering, focusing on retrieval augmented generation, also known as RAG, and you also want to be focusing on fine-tuning a model. The evaluation of models still remains a challenge. It has been mentioned multiple times today. We don't have a good solution about it, but we are plug and play, so if you find a solution, it will work. In terms of deployments, it's kind of the same as MLOps, but there are some added challenges that exist now. LLM chain, LLM cascading are all things that are important to be able to connect your LLMs together. And optimization like quantization are also important to reduce the weight of your model and to be able to serve better. Finally, the monitoring aspect is very critical so that you can know that your performance metrics are doing good, that you can detect any data change and biases, and you can recompute your embeddings or fine-tune your model if you need to. So to integrate generative AI in enterprise, there are a few capabilities that we think are really important for you to set up. The first one is give easy access to generative AI models to employees or data scientists in your company. How can you get them to securely access this model? How do you know that the licenses for this model is appropriate for your enterprise use case? So that's the first capability that is needed. The second capability is really about managing your embeddings and managing your prompts. You don't want to have multiple teams designing different prompts to do the same things. You want to be able to allow them to collaborate. Likewise, for embeddings, you don't want to recompute embeddings from same documents and store them in different places. So how can you centralize that to really build on this knowledge over time? AI orchestration, I touched a little bit previously about it in the development phase of LLM ops. How do you implement and manage complex workflow and components that power your real generative AI application from end to finish and all the different agents that might connect to different APIs? Once you have these three capabilities, the three following ones are really about how do you scale that. Deployment and hosting is very critical and still challenging for many customers. How can they deploy the generative AI and scale these models in production? They are often very large, can be in the hundreds of gigs, and the latency is not always great. Then governance is a very important aspect. Depending on the industry in which you are working, it might be critical to your business to be able to track, audit, and reproduce your models, even after an extremely long period of time. Some of our customers need to be able to reproduce the model from 10 years back. And finally, how do you deploy your model in different clouds? It can be AWS, Azure, or GCP, but it can also be in your own on-prem environments where you want to use your own NVIDIA DGX box to be able to do the expensive compute and then deploy the model once that's done. All right, so you've all seen different versions of this schema today. Is really the life cycle of large language model. And I'm not going to go through each of these boxes, but just look at your data now can be used both for computing the embeddings as well as to fine-tune the model that you have. Most people are not training from scratch a new LLM. They are going to be using a foundation model like Llama V2 or Falcon, or maybe even ChatGPT directly from OpenAI. Then they will start focusing on building their application. So to build your LLM application, you need to be having a set of instructions or prompts that will tell the model how to behave based on certain input you will get. You will need agents to give this external connectivity and API interaction. And you will want to be able to test that. And all the test prompt is kind of a manual process still, or you are just using a golden data set to see, okay, if I'm doing A, I'm expecting B as an answer. And the LLM app validation is the component that really helps you decide, okay, am I ready to move to the next phase in the life cycle? Or do I need more data to be able to create more embeddings? Or do I need more data to fine-tune my model? Once you feel confident enough to move your model to production, you need monitoring. Monitoring is really the most critical piece in that workflow. How can you monitor the outputs that are generated by the model? How do you monitor the interaction that the user have with the application? Are they giving a thumbs down or up? How do you monitor the inputs that the user might be entering, like when they are interacting with your application? So monitoring is really a key piece, and we propose to use evaluator large language model as a way to track how you are doing. And also having data sets, a golden data set, which is a great way to just you calculate how far you are from the truth. And this again will go back to your validation LLM and help you decide whether you need to fine tune or add more data into your embeddings. So now you have your LLM application, you have your life cycle. There are still a lot of challenges that need to be addressed in terms of LLM. And I'm just copying here this excellent study, Challenge and Application of Large Language Model, that was published in July. They kind of show that there are three big aspects: the design, the behavior, and the science of managing LLMs. The first challenge is the size of the data set. Often it's now trained on the whole web, so you can't expect anybody to go and check the quality of the data. We over-rely on tokenizer, which brings some challenges just in terms of how do you compute them and how do you deal with information loss. Fine-tuning is still an overhead. It's very expensive. You need large memory depending on the model that you are fine-tuning. And now we are hearing more and more that very large models don't really improve a whole bunch when they are fine-tuned. It's better to fine-tune a smaller model like a 7B or 13B versus the 70B from Llama in terms of gains that you are getting. There are very high pre-training costs. Most companies cannot afford to do that. It's really the big player out there that can afford it. The latency is still a big challenge, and the context length is also a challenge where often when you ask to summarize a whole book, it will just summarize the first 2 pages, right? I'm going to go a bit quicker here, but hallucination, prompt brittleness, misaligned behavior are all behavior issues that can be addressed. Evaluation, as I mentioned, is still a big challenge in the world of LLM and generative AI in general. And that's it. So now we have this maturity curve that we are looking at from enterprise perspective, and they can grade themselves how mature they are and how much value they are getting. So the first thing that you want to optimize in your enterprise is you want to accelerate research, right? You want to be able to do prototype quickly. You want to make sure that you can validate some business idea. To do that, you need to give your team enterprise data access, IDE tooling, self-serve GPU, container access. And now with generative AI, you also need to be able to manage your prompt and give access to foundation model. The next step is how can you efficiently deploy this model that you have created? For that, you need job scheduling, experiment management, and now more and more you need to be able to integrate nicely into a CI/CD deployment flow. Then the next step is to have advanced AI solution, where being able to have pipeline, distributed frameworks like Ray, for example, and model hosting becomes really critical. And finally, for the first step in building mature LLM ops, you need to have model with safety nets. So for this, you need model evaluation and model monitoring. Most people stop here, but you really want to be able to go further out to really increase the productivity of your team of data scientists. For this, you need to be able to bring data science container management system so they can easily rebuild on container that works. You want to make the knowledge searchable, and you want to be able to have a good reproducibility engine. What I mean by reproducibility engine is any model that is serving some traffic, you need to go back to open that model and understand exactly how it was built or fine-tuned, or what are the embeddings that are serving this model. And then you need a model registry where you're going to save all your model, obviously. The next step is to have an optimal model health and to reduce the risk that you are getting. Again, integrated monitoring, validation, and retraining are critical capabilities that are needed for this. And finally, you can get to a place where you have repeatable AI profits, secure AI, and for this you want to have project management and a central platform. So at Domino, we recently announced Domino Model Century, and our idea is how do we help large customers to build and operationalize responsible AI in enterprise. And we have this set of capabilities. I'll start with project template. It's really a way for you to define how you want your team of data scientists to be working. So you can automate and standardize the workflow that they are going to follow. You can ask them to run a certain number of sets of checks before registering a model. Then you want to go and register your model. You want to have a centralized management where you can track and also have the lineage, what data were used, what environment was used, what hardware was used, who was involved, and what were the metric and the parameter. All of this goes into the model registry. We actually automatically generate a model card for each model that you register. You can, of course, edit it and add more information, but we think it's more valuable if we make it on your behalf. And it will track the purpose of the model, the performance, and you can see all the limitations and biases of your model as well. Finally, we have a model review. Next step is to have a model review that is fully customizable. Every enterprise I'm talking with have different steps to review a model before moving to production. Then you want to be able to stage your model, how you can move from dev to staging to production or whichever environment you have. And finally, having a model monitoring in place where you can track, optimize your performance, and really build your own metric that are evaluating the quality of your model in production. So at Domino, we have 4 key benefits. The first one is we help boost productivity of team of data scientists. They can reuse templates. We actually offer assisted fine-tuning for commercial grade foundation model. So with a couple of clicks, you can decide which foundation model you want to use. We help you doing the fine tuning, and then you can just deploy it. We have a self-service infrastructure with GPU, vector database, and array capabilities. We are also enterprise ready. Actually, that's our bread and butter. And there is a built-in system of record, support for reproducibility, collaboration, scalability, and security as well. Responsible AI, I already talked about Model Century, but it's all built into our Domino platform, so it works just out of the box. And finally, we are aware that there is a lot of cost that comes with large language model and generative AI in general. So we have set up capability for budget and alerting, being able to set limits on quota, and being able to manage the auto-scaling and scaling down to 0 as well for your models. All right, that's all the things I wanted to share with you today. Thanks a lot for taking the time. If you want more information, thank you. If you want more information, feel free to scan the QR code that brings you to our page. Thank you so much.